Well, good evening again, everyone. My name is Olga Trunova, and I'm a coordinator of the so-called ESA SDG project, responding to the challenge of COVID-19, threat or opportunity for education. And before we will start, I would like to introduce a little bit better myself and also my colleagues who greatly contributed to this result of the collaborative work. I'm a ESA fellow, and I'm also a third-year PhD candidate in the Department of Management. Originally, I'm from Russia. And then,
Thank you, Olga. My name is Igor Bröckel. I'm originally from Germany, and I'm a PhD student in the physics department in my third year now.
Okay.
Good afternoon, and I am Mansoura Gholami, a third-year PhD student from Iran, and I study a program of health safety green system under supervision of 4 different departments. And
Buonasera a tutti. I'm Gerard Kirsten. I come from South Africa, and I'm a final third-year PhD student at the Department of Mathematics.
Hello, everybody. My name is Abdel Majid. I'm originally from Egypt, and I am a PhD student in the Department of Literary and Philosophical Culture in my second year.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Julia Silibanova. I'm originally from Russia, and I am a PhD student in the field of oceanography and polar climate.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Dora Tot. I come from Croatia, and I'm a second-year PhD student in global histories, cultures, and politics, and also a ESA fellow.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Masayo Watanabe from Japan, a PhD student of the 35th cycle at the Department of Philosophy and Communication Studies. Thank you.
thank you very much. And now let me jump in and tell you actually what we are going to talk about today in our presentation. I will start with a preface and introduction, and then we will shortly illustrate 7 experiences of countries, so-called country cases. And then I will briefly conclude with the conclusion section, outlining the results, what have been revealed in this report. First of all, of course, it's important to say how this story had started. In 2018, we had an idea to undertake a joint project. And we were aware that University of Bologna is fully committed to the agenda of sustainable development goals, which were created by the United States, by the United Nations, sorry. And among all these 17 goals, after brainstorming discussions, we decided to focus on the goal number 4, education, because this is something which is truly connecting us. It presents a common ground. The same as the Institute of Advanced Studies presents a common ground, uniting all of us doctoral students from different countries, different backgrounds, different research areas. And the outcome of our collaborative work turned to be a report. We focused on education in a close connection with one end. We found out that they have absolutely different stories, different directions, and different challenges and lessons to learn from. That was an experiment for us, and that served as a foundation for further collaborative work, which we continued this year. We kept the path on education, SDG number 4, but of course we could not ignore the influence of the global pandemic. And in this report, we try to capture how governments in different countries reacted to this external shock. And of course, pandemic, it is a crisis, but whether pandemic can be also considered as an opportunity for national education system, and how actually it was happening in different geographical contexts. And if you are talking about SDG, we have to say that there is set of SDG goals, but before there was a set of Millennium Development Goals. They were extensively criticized for quite narrow focus and incomplete agenda. So the set of SDGs became more universal and all-encompassing in nature. And it was sort of plan that has to be applied for all nations. And SDG number 4 in particular, which is about education, which is about the access, the quality, inclusivity of education. Even before pandemic, there were some reports and studies that say that it is already quite problematic to achieve. And there was sort of learning crisis. So coronavirus, it was additional tremendous burden for different countries and governments. So for us, it served as additional motivation to see how national governments across the globe were dealing with the consequences of pandemic, keeping the education sector viable. And we actually aim to capture this situation, these experiences in 7 different countries, such as Egypt, Germany, Croatia, South Africa, Japan, Sweden, and the US. All of these countries are located in different parts of the world. And since SDG is universal and all-encompassing in nature, we also try to capture different stages of education, such as primary education, secondary, and also university and college level. We try to understand what was the impact of pandemic on education sector in each country, and was this challenge stimulate government maybe for some innovative solutions? What was the meaning and content of these transformations, and whether there were many or any positive changes in the country. And the first case, it will be Egypt, and I would like to welcome my colleague, Abdel. The floor is yours.
Hello again. I present the case of Egypt. Would you like to go to the next slide, please, Olga? I will just directly go to the point because of the time restriction we have. Egypt has the largest educational system in the Middle East and North Africa, with more than 20 million students in the pre-tertiary level of education. Its educational system is divided into 3 stages. Basic education includes kindergarten for 2 years, primary school for 6 years, and preparatory school for 3 years. Secondary school for 3 years, and it's divided into technical and general. The first is a vocational, is a type of vocational education that prepares the students to enter the job market directly as a technician or as an employee in a skilled craft, trade, or industry. The second is divided into 2 sections, humanities and sciences, and it ends with the exams of Thanawiyya Amma, required to access the next level, which is university. And in these 2 stages, the main actor is the Ministry of Education and Technical Education. Then we have the tertiary level, which includes bachelor degrees, masters, and doctorates. And it's supervised by the Ministry of Higher Education and Scientific Research. Main problems in education in Egypt are high density of students per class, differences between the education provided in public and private schools, also known as the wealth gap, and gender disparity. Next, please. COVID-19 arrived in Egypt on the 14th of February 2020. Right after that, the ministry undertook a series of decisions, closure of all schools, moving classes online, and also implementing new methods of grading. For example, students from the 3rd grade to the 9th grade had to submit a research project in either individually or in a group of maximum 5 students in the same school. However, there was the case regarding the exams of Sanawiyya Amma required to access university and technical diploma examinations. The ministry insisted on holding the exams in presence. There was a lot of opposition against that. But in the end, after ups and downs, the exams were actually held in presence. Next, please. And the ministry was actually successful in conducting the examination for Sanawiyya Amma for more than 652,000 students, and diploma exam and the technical diploma examination for more than 776,000 students for the academic year to 2019-2020. Next, please. The situation of the pandemic affected the system in both negative and positive ways. So on one hand, some school subjects have been shortened, and the situation was not the best for the poor communities which did not have a decent access to the internet. And there was a sort of criticism to the grading based on the alternative methods implemented by the ministry. On the other hand, it was an opportunity to revise the system and rebuild it in a way to be able to confront future similar situations. It highlighted more than ever the importance of the acceleration of the process of digitalization in education in Egypt. It also inspired innovation within the system to promote finding and delivering solutions that could guarantee a quality education for those most affected. Many initiatives have taken place. For example, the learning management system has been created to facilitate communication between teachers and students, and to virtually monitor students' performance and efficiently distribute learning materials. Another example is the project of Every Child Connect project, which have been created to provide students across the country with electronic devices to be able to access the e-learning experience. So to sum up on the case of Egypt, I can say that so far the country have been successful to face the situation, and initiatives and procedures that took place are to accelerate the process of digitalization and to put the educational system on the right way to achieve more quality in terms of international standards. Here I stop and I give the microphone to my colleague, Doratot, that will present the case of Croatia.
Hello, everyone again. Olga, we can start with the first slide. According to the researches published last year depicting the digitalization level of world's leading economies, Croatia was at the bottom of global digital competitiveness rankings. However, the Croatian government has been prioritizing digital skills. And in the domain of education, an important project has been launched in 2015, promoting extensive digitalization of schools. Next slide, please. The educational system in Croatia is supervised by the Ministry of Science and Education on all 3 levels. Primary education in Croatia is compulsory. It consists of 8 grades divided into 2 stages, from the 1st to the 4th and from the 5th to the 8th. On the other hand, the secondary education is still optional, and the students can choose between gymnasiums, vocational schools, and art schools. Tertiary education in Croatia consists of universities, polytechnic schools, and colleges. Next slide, please. Measures undertaken at the educational institutions during the pandemic. So on March 16, 2020, so even before the nationwide lockdown was introduced at the end of March, educational institutions closed and transferred their classes online, with an exception of 1st to the 4th grades of primary schools, who were provided a distance learning TV program broadcast on the national television. And here in the corner, you can see the screenshot of the program for third graders broadcast on the first day. Next slide, please. In September 2020, as the second wave was approaching and the new school year had begun, the ABC model was introduced to schools. That means that the schools could choose between one of the three models, that as having the classes fully online, having the classes face-to-face, or having the classes in a mixed modality. Although most of the classes back then was opting for the face-to-face teaching, on 14th September, as the situation with the pandemic was getting worse, secondary schools altogether transferred to the C model, that is the online model, and the primary schools followed their example. Considering the higher education institutions for the academic year 2020-2021 issued were recommendations of how to conduct classes during the pandemic. And importantly, the university components were granted the autonomy and the decision-making process as how they want to conduct the classes during the pandemic in one of the three models. And even though most of the university back then was in favor of having the classes face-to-face, in November 2020, the recommendations by the ministry were revised and to transition to the online model. And as a result, more and more institutions of higher education opted for having the classes online. Next slide, please. Pandemic can also be seen as an opportunity. And in the case of Croatia, I detected the three main points of how the pandemic can be seen as bringing positive outcomes for the educational system of Croatia. Firstly, it increased and accelerated the digitalization, and this is most notable on the project eSchools, that I previously mentioned. Secondly, it revealed the problem of socioeconomic inequality and the lack of digital infrastructure, especially in remote areas of the country, thus bringing awareness to the problem. And lastly, it showed the advantages of distance learning and teaching. For example, an easy access to the lectures, regardless of the location, or it changed the attitudes of some lecturers who are not prone to using digital technologies in their teaching, or for both students and teachers, they could learn or improve new sets of digital skills. That would be it from my part, and I give the floor to my colleague Igor, who will be presenting the case of Croatia, of Germany.
Thank you, Dora. Okay, so let me start by briefly explain you the educational system in Germany. Thank you. So the educational system in Germany in detail is quite difficult to explain, given the fact that each federal state manages the education system on its own. But the rough structure can be seen here summarized. So children start with the kindergarten, which is optional in Germany, where they stay for 6 or 7 years. And after that, they go to the elementary school, which is mandatory, where they study for another 4 years. Then, depending on their performance in elementary school, they can go to 3 different schools. So to either Hauptschule, Realschule, or the so-called Gymnasium. And students who are graduating from Gymnasium are allowed to attend university classes afterwards. Next slide, please. Okay, so the first corona case in Germany was detected by the end of January in Bavaria, and it didn't take very long in order for the virus to spread. So already by mid-March, schools and kindergartens had to close. Now, for instance, in the federal state Baden-Württemberg, every second school reported very great difficulties to get through this crisis, according to a survey. The 3 major difficulties which could be identified were, for instance, 40% of school administrators reported that schools are not well enough equipped for the situation. Many students do not have private laptops and computers and pads at home, so they could not follow online lectures. And another problem was the teachers are not well enough experienced in online teaching. So one could see that the classical task sheet was still the most frequently used teaching format, in addition to, for instance, explanatory videos, digital presentations, and video conferences. Next slide, please. Where, of course, the teaching format depends on the type of school. Now, another very important problem which one could find is that the lack of interaction between teachers and students. So for instance, 37% of teachers claimed that they have regular contact with less than a half of the students, or even with very few students. 47% of students say that they receive teaching material only once a week, where another 47% say that they are daily provided with teaching material. So there's a big discrepancy here. Another 37% of students in upper secondary schools stated that they spend less than 2 hours per day on digital lessons. Next slide, please. So there are many problems with remote teaching. For instance, we know that human interactions are an essential part of education, especially for younger children. We also know that digital education widened the gap between stronger and weaker students, and also the support from parents become way more important in these cases. However, we could and also should use the momentum of the current developments in order to increase digitalization and the expertise by, for instance, training our teachers, provide digital equipment, and install digital learning platforms. Next slide, please. And the first step in this direction was done in 2018 by the German government by deciding to invest 5 billion euro in the digitalization of schools, which was called the Digitalpakt Schule. Also last year in September, at a so-called school summit, the federal government and the ministers of education agreed upon the following bullet points in order to overcome the crisis. For instance, they agreed upon trying to avoid further school closings, equipping German teachers with work laptops, provide data flat rates for students so they don't have to pay for any internet costs, also train and finance IT administration staffs for schools, and an implementation of a national-wide educational platform in the Digital Competence Center for further training of teachers in handling digital teaching material. Okay, so this is the case of Germany, and next we'll be hearing about the case of Japan. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you, Igor. So now I'll talk about the case of Japan. So next slide, please. The population of Japan is about 126 million, of which in total, almost 90% have access to the internet. As for the young generation, it's about 99%. Next slide, please. Ministry of Education, Culture, Sports, Science, and Technology is responsible for the education in Japan. Children aged 6 to 12 receive compulsory education at elementary schools. The 3 years education at junior high schools is also compulsory. The upper secondary education is not compulsory, but 99% of the junior high school students go on to the next level of education. Tertiary education is generally divided into 3 kinds: universities and other colleges. The next slide, please. The Prime Minister asked all schools to close from March 2020. During the 3-month school closure, only 5% of the schools provided live streaming classes. Owing to the state of emergency declared by the government in April, over 80% of the universities postponed the start of regular classes. But as of July 1st, about 84% of the universities were conducting distance learning classes in some way. The next slide, please. The pandemic did prompt all education entities to digitalize themselves urgently. In the primary and secondary education, all students had been supposed to possess their own computers by March 2024, which was moved ahead by 3 years due to the pandemic. Facing the pandemic, universities managed to adapt themselves to digitalizing education, although the improvement is still required. So now the next speaker is Gerhardus.
Thank you, Masayo. So I will be talking about South Africa. You can move on to the next one, Olga. Thank you. So in South Africa, the education system is divided into two main parts. We've got the Department of Basic Education, which includes your primary and secondary classic schools. Many of them are public schools funded by the government, but we've also got many private schools funded independently, which are normally more expensive. This also includes early childhood development centers and special needs schools. Then we have the Department of Higher Education, which is typically your universities, further education training colleges where you get diplomas and other basic education and training centers. Thank you. Next slide, Olga. So firstly, the secondary schools, we look at how they responded to the pandemic. So the schools closed on the 18th of March in the previous year. And this was a highly debated topic in South Africa. Why? Because of the extreme inequality in the country. So the big thing is closing the schools would benefit the rich, but not the poor. So middle-class children and rich children are 2 times likelier to attend schools digitally, where most people living in rural areas do not have access to internet, never mind electricity or computers. Another thing is that in the rural communities, many children rely on having at least one of their one or maybe even 2 meals served at school that day, and their parents cannot afford to buy those meals at home every day. So this led to some malnutrition issues and also being exposed to more substance abuse, child abuse, and domestic violence. So it's a big topic about how the inequality was extended in the country. And another really big thing that was revealed is small things like infrastructural issues. A basic thing that you need to open a school is access to water and sanitation in the middle of a pandemic. But most schools, there are many schools who do not have access to these basic needs. So this was a big issue. Next one, please, Olga. In terms of the higher education sector, the colleges and universities, they had different kind of problems. One being, for example, getting computers to all the students since the universities closed on the 15th of March. So some universities launched big campaigns getting computers to students. And the other thing is data costs are extremely high in South Africa. So some students that are already funded by the National Student Financial Aid Scheme, or NSFAS, got data for free. And the country managed to make many platforms zero rated or have no data cost, but still things like Zoom and YouTube, you still require data for. So it's something that they had to work on, but I would say the biggest progress they made was the outrolling of computers to students countrywide. Next slide, please. So naturally, there are many pros and cons. In my personal opinion, I would say there were more cons in South Africa, revealing once again the inequality and the gap between the haves and the have-nots. I was thinking now while Igor was speaking, mentioning how the influence of parents become more important when you're studying from home. And you have to think that many of these kids living in the rural areas, their parents did not go to school because of the apartheid that ended 27 years ago. Some of them can't even read or write. So this was big issues from the past that have still not been resurrected, that have come forward again. Nevertheless, we have moved forward towards the virtual learning, expanding the digital access with the computers, reducing data costs, and making some applications zero rated. So there are some positives and there are some negatives. Thank you very much. And next is Sweden, and it will be Julia.
Thank you, Gerhard. Right. I chose this country due to its distinctive COVID strategy from the first days of pandemic. While Sweden is a Northern European country with a population of over 10 million people, the major part of the population lives in the cities, mainly in the southern part of the country. Hence, density varies from 5 people in the north up to 1,500 people in the urban areas. There is a large number of elderly people and high life expectancy. Sweden is considered on the top of metrics of quality of life, protection of civil liberties, and human development. It follows the Nordic model, a combination of free market capitalism and social benefits, including free healthcare system and education. The tax burdens are very high, but a large amount of this money is spent on education and healthcare. The next slide, please. The main objective of education Sweden, the education system, is to give an equal access to all students, including children with disabilities and Sami students. The education system is decentralized. The federal government implements the framework, but municipalities are responsible for most of the education. The compulsory school includes 9 classes, but most of the students stay in the upper secondary school, which takes 3 years. Moreover, Sweden follows lifelong learning strategy and allows all Swedish residents to complete basic education. Sweden is highly digitalized country except for rural areas, but in the light of the pandemic, the authorities decided to spread broadband expansion to the rural areas. The next slide, please. A few words about Swedish COVID approach. The authorities haven't introduced a strict lockdown and mandatory mask wearing. Lockdown was considered as a violation of freedom of movement. Authorities relied on common sense of the population who was supposed to keep the distance, wash hands, and stay at home when sick. Everyone accepted the responsibility for his health and life. The next slide, please. Regarding education, the government kept the same strategy, remaining schools open as much as possible, despite the fact that they can ensure transit to remote learning. The decision to close schools concerned only upper secondary schools and later the universities. Children are found to get milder symptoms and transmit virus less than adolescents. Additionally, the study compared the effect of measures in Sweden and Finland and revealed that there is no significant impact of school closure on the number of confirmed cases among children. There is more concern about the negative impact of school closure on mental and physical health, as well as academic performance. During lockdown, children can experience more anxiety, behavioral problems, and conflicts at home. For those who were transferred to distance and didn't have access to the laptop or to good internet connections, the school suggested the solution to study in the local library or even to send materials via post. Although the Swedish approach is widely criticized, there are evidence some positive aspects, in particular in the education system. Thank you. I give the floor to Mansoura.
Thank you, Julia. I will talk about United States. Olga, if you please go to the next slide. Thank you. Well, United States is one of the 4th largest country in the world, and with a large population, 328 billion and 50 states. And we are also facing a highly digitalized country. Olga, could you please go to the next slide? Thank you. The digitalization in the US mainly starts from decade 90, that most of the schools could have access to the text-based kind of internet, for example, emails and online chatting. But in 2000s, the internet became like more dynamic, and individual could access internet. And in 2010, most of the schools were facilitated by internet, and it was reported that 20% increase in learning has happened because of the technology. Olga, could you please go to the list? Thank you. The Department of Education in US is a federal agency that consists of all the high school and universities, and supervise and set policies and kind of manage all the federal education supports. It supports 55 million students in elementary and 100,000 public schools and 34,000 private schools, and it supports 10 million undergraduate students too. Olga, could you please go? Thank you. Generally, schools in US is preschool, elementary school, and high school. For preschool, kids started at the age of 3, and then elementary school that will start from age of 5, and then it continues for 7 years. And high school is for 5 years, and it will be end at the age of 18. And Olga, would you please go to the next slide? Okay, pandemic, well, the 15th of February, gradually schools start to get online, and by the mid of the March, all the schools and universities went online. And well, the digitalization level of US was in a good condition, and internet access was mostly accessible, but students and university students showed many problems. For example, students showed like decrease in basic skills and learning, or physical and mental health issues and eating disorders. And also there were high amount of reports about domestic neglect, harassment, or abuses. For university students, the situation was kind of different because of a digital opportunity gap that they had. And also depression and anxiety was completely impressive in US, and the educational fallout also was completely highlighted during the last year. Olga, could you please go to the next slide? Thank you. But for the opportunity, I just chose a part of Harvard University's newspaper that mentioned that after the pandemic, and young generation and university students are more aware of the importance of science to human health and daily life. And this was my part. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mansoura. And now let me briefly summarize actually what we have obtained in this report. 7 different countries and 7 different stories. The results were quite diverse. And for instance, in case of Egypt, we witnessed mixed results. On the one hand, pandemic inspired innovation, not only in education sector, but also in other areas. On another hand, there were also quite serious problems such as wealth gap and inequality. In case of Croatia, the government started digitalization earlier, but nevertheless, the distance learning was one of the most challenging novelty for a country. In case of Germany, government is still pushing actively towards digitalization. And this pandemic, it increased the internal cooperation among regions across the whole country. Nevertheless, infrastructure remains the key issue. In case of Japan, similar as Croatia, digitalization started earlier, but in reality, it was not implemented properly in practice. So the pandemic became an additional driver which boosted digitalization across different levels of education system. South Africa, well, that experience was quite particular because pandemic helped to reveal already existing issues, bringing them into the focus, such as inequity and inequality, difference between citizens and villagers, and different access facilities and infrastructure, many problems related to the functioning of education sector. The case of Sweden is outlier. Government decided not to close education entities and remain schools and universities open, even though there was observed highly digitalized, high level of preparedness in case the schools will be closed. The US already took active steps towards digitalization in advance. Nevertheless, there were observed serious issues such as lack of financial support and also psychological problems of students on different levels. And of course, global pandemic, it is a crisis, but nevertheless, it also brought some advantages. It helped to boost collective resilience and creativity across the globe. It helped to reveal existing problems in education and also other sectors. Global pandemic also helped to become additional driver for collaboration and cooperation in fighting together the global threats. And also all of us, we had to adopt to this rapidly changing environment and being transformed into the new learners to not only live and survive, but also to thrive in this new reality. Thank you very much. That's all for us. I'm going to stop sharing my screen.
Thank you very much, Olga. Thank you. Thanks everybody. Actually, I should mention that Mansoureh Gholami is actually in the US right now. So she's talking to us from Arizona, if I remember correctly. Well, thanks.
Dario,
yes, that's right.
Yeah,
go ahead. Go ahead. Bye.
Yeah, just a few questions. The first one is that why not Italy as a country case? So my suggestion is to enrich your report with Italy, and so but the point is that in your opinion, Olga, or the other colleagues, based on what you learn and based on your experience, I would like to know your opinion about the university sector. Okay, just university sector. We had a jump into the digital world in a shock way, and now the point that we are discussing within our community, but also that I used to discuss with the other rectors all around the world, is that which is the right mixture or the right blending between what we can do with the digital settings and what we should do with the digital setting and what we can or should do in presence. So from one side, we all agree that we should make all the efforts to reduce the digital divide. Okay, so that's the first point. But after that, on one side we see that the digital setting in the university sector open and give the opportunity to have a high degree of education to many people. So exactly the SDG goal that you mentioned at the beginning. Okay, so high quality for all, high quality education for all. From the other side, we all know that there is no fully digital experience that can be an alternative to the social relation, because learning is not just a is a social experience. Okay, so which is the right balance between the two? So which direction, in your opinion, University of Bologna should take in the next future? So not me, but just your suggestion to the candidates for the rectorship. So which is the right direction so a blended way of teaching? So just to have both a way, or select the digital setting for certain kind of students, or for some kind of activities. So because what I see is that an opportunity to enlarge the number of students and to increase the level of knowledge of the society. But from the other side, I see also the possibility to create inequalities between students that have the possibility to have a full experience in presence, and the other students that cannot do that. So there is no right answer. Just what I was forced to reason about that starting on February 22, the last year, is the day when I sent the first mail to our community, communicating that we were going to stop the lectures for 2 weeks. Okay, and you know what happened after that. So if you have any suggestion for me, for the University of Bologna, today or in the future, you can contact me, you can write me an email. I'd be very grateful to you for any good suggestion.
Rector's challenge. Well, if any of you wants to, answer the question, we are recording, so that we will stay forever in the digital world.
Yeah.
And maybe I have a small comment on that.
Go.
I guess it's difficult to say that, like, using digitalization in one direction, like whether you use it or not, it kind of depends on the situation, what you want to do. Like, from my personal experience, like the biggest benefit of this whole situation was how easy it became to interact with other scientists. Like right now, it's just so easy and common to give a talk like all over the world. I mean, you can give seminars and talks in the States, in Africa, in Australia, wherever. This became very quickly very normal. And using this process in order to enhance scientific exchange and collaboration is very useful.
I agree with you, and so there are a lot of opportunities to have more relations in a different way, but more relations, and so I understand the opportunity that you mentioned.
Francesco, one of our testimonials is also asking to comment on your question.
Oh, wow.
Come in, Drini.
Yes, thank you for this opportunity. Well, from my experience, modest experience so far in the business of research, chemistry and trust are essential to be successful. And that is hard to build in Zoom. Of course, Zoom and other similar platforms make it very easy to interact, and that's highly appreciated. But after all, if you want to have joint projects, you need both chemistry. And when I mean for chemistry, Professor Braga, I don't mean the science of chemistry, but I mean affection. But it has some chemistry also inside. Maybe you can explain later. But you need chemistry and you need trust. And that you cannot build online. You build over years and over intensive eye-to-eye communication. So that would be my modest reaction based on my modest experience I've had so far.
Thank you, Jenny.
Thank you.
Gerard is also asking.
Yeah, I actually wanted to say something in the same line, challenging Igor's comment, because it is an amazing opportunity to be able to give a talk anywhere over the world whenever you want to. But there's nothing that compares to going to a conference and finishing your talk and you have 10 people asking you questions. And us coming to the final year of our PhD now, where networking is so important. I think some of us, I know I ended up in Bologna because of networking. And that's one big thing you lose. So you can give as many talks as you want, but if you can't talk to people afterwards, I'm not sure how obviously people are seeing your work, but that's one key thing to me that's missing at the moment, is that networking opportunity.
Thank you, Gerard.
Thank you.
Would like to say something too.
Yeah.
I guess it's a context-based situation. So, I mean, at the moment, I guess it's not like being fully digital is not the case. So it has to be like mixed. But I think if Sarah, you're asking for the future, I think the future is going to be digital, with also the projects they are doing in. I remember I have once watched a video about a simulation on how it was made by University of Turku in Finland, on how like the process of education will be in the future, and how it will be like possible to create even labs online with like simulation techniques. So I guess if this like not an advice, but like maybe a suggestion for the University of Bologna, that it prepares from now to enter like the digitalization world. Like now we don't go to cinema anymore. We just watch everything on Netflix. Even new movies, they come to us on Netflix, sitting in our homes, like drinking teas and or other stuff. So this is my comment.
Thank you. I agree with the fact that at the moment the near future is blended. In the long run, I don't know, but in the near future, I see that everything will be blended, in my opinion. The point is blended in which way, so which kind of balance. But anyway, that's the response in the near future. The point, I don't want to. I'm going to stop, Daria, but just one last comment.
Yes,
the other point in this digital evolution, so rapid evolution. Again, I'm looking just at the university world. Is that the big techs? So I mean Google, Amazon, Microsoft, but also Netflix. They are entering the education sector right now. And this will change dramatically the landscape of education in the world. So that's another point. And the final one, just as food for thought, is that what we learn in the research field is that when some private big companies enter the research sector, creating private database, from that position, somehow they control, I mean, at least two big players. So if I look at that, and now all the policies like at the European level that are pushing all the university to move towards an open science paradigm. What I see today is that all the digital teaching activities, or most of them, is run over private platforms. Not all, but many. And so in the future, I think that we should think about that. In the light that I said before, so big techs are entering the education world. This is again, this could be an opportunity to scale up in terms of number. This could be also a threat for the future. Okay, I would like.
Thank you. You're kind of designing the project for next year. For the next contingent of PhD students, some of them will also stay with us, because some will leave when they finish up with their PhD, but some will stay, and new ones will come. So that could actually be a good topic. It could actually be a good topic for the next challenge. Okay, we'll think about that.
Dario, let me say just the last thing, and then I stop. I please, to all the PhD students that I listen today, please become testimonials. So become ambassadors of our university. Help us to disseminate, to promote our PhD programs towards young, brilliant PhD or prospective PhD students all over the world. So please help us in our project.
3 testimonials are introducing themselves right now. If you can spare another 10 minutes with us.
Yeah.
Okay. So, Priyank, you first. Get a microphone.
Yes. Hello, everyone. Priyank here. I hope you are able to hear me. Thanks a lot, Professor Braga, for this invitation and helping me to reconnect with ISA after a decade, I must say. And I'm really glad, very happy to be here, seeing you all, especially you, Professor Braga, and I can also see my research supervisor, Professor Casadio here. I'm thankful she's here as well. So, yeah, hello, Professor Casadio. Yeah, I mean, I'm getting a bit nostalgic after, to be honest, because it's really long time, and also seeing my colleagues, Masood here and Brini here, especially with whom I shared the living place, not only just the university academic environment, but also the place where we lived in Collegio Superiore. Yeah, so you asked me, Professor Braga, to start with introduction and to these new PhD students. So my background is from India, and I joined the University of Bologna for the PhD program in computer science with area of research in bioinformatics in the lab of Professor Rita Casadio sitting here. It's a very renowned research group. I'm sure you already know Bologna Biocomputing Group, and especially for people who do research in bioinformatics. I mean, it's hard to hear if someone says that I don't know that research group. That would mean that person is not have really studied bioinformatics, to be honest. So yeah, and it was a great let's say experience, and I must say privilege as well to be a part of Institute of Advanced Studies. And Rector was mentioning at the start, especially for the developing countries, and I totally acknowledge and appreciate the kind of opportunity I got coming from a developing countries. But I would like to add on that the value of me getting selected for that program through the financial support of being there and living and studying in Bologna, I felt the whole idea of the PhD students and the senior professors, visiting professors, and even the undergrad students who were part of Collegio Superiore, all living in one particular building at the same time. The kind of environment that created and I enjoyed there was much more valuable than I guess all the finances might have been involved. So I don't think we can estimate the value of that whole idea of putting everyone under one roof. I remember like every week we used to have these talks from different visiting professors coming from around the world, and listening to those people from different disciplines, different areas is not a normal thing what you could experience if you just are living outside that sort of campus. So yeah. So I came from India. I originally was from biotechnology background, who was aspiring to study more computing and informatics. But before coming to Italy, I also did my master's in bioinformatics. And then in the lab of Professor Casadio, I learned machine learning and programming. And I can say that that's what I'm actually teaching now. So if I can't say that there can be any better testimonial than this, that I'm teaching what I learned in Bologna. So that was years 2007 to 2010, mid of 2010, 3.5 years. And from then I moved for a postdoc in Vienna. For 6 years, I was in Vienna doing a postdoc in bioinformatics, learning about next generation sequencing, data analysis, and collaborating on different research projects ranging from cancer to JAK-STAT signaling, pathways, and so on. And then in 2016, so that was 2010 to 2016, I was in Vienna. And then 2016, I moved to Ulster University in UK as a lecturer. And since 2016, I'm working here doing teaching and teaching PhD and MSc students, and supervising PhD students, researching in the field of personalized medicine, wherein major focus has been to find biomarkers to stratify patients, with the idea that there is not one treatment for all the persons. So every treatment has to be tailored, has to be personalized. So we are looking for more endotypes or more stratified groups of patients in different disease areas at the place where I'm working here. And yeah, so that's all I can say. I mean, if there is any specific thing you want to know from me, I will be more than happy to speak about.
Yeah. Thank you, Priyank. Actually, as I mentioned in one of my emails, this could also be a way to reconnect in terms of science. So maybe we could, taking advantage of the online mode, to have one of a talk from you, a scientific talk organized by the Institute. I will be very happy to organize so. Maybe Rita will be your chairwoman in that case. Okay, I would move on to Drini then. If we are short of time, but your testimonials are very, very important for us. Drini.
Thank you very much. So I got the message. I'll keep it short.
Yeah.
Thank you again for this opportunity, and it's really emotional to get in touch with you and colleagues from ESA. I was there during the same time with Priyank during 2008, 2010. I was doing PhD in agri-food economics and policy with Professor Viaggi, one of the greatest mentors and scholars I've ever worked with. And I was very privileged to be part of ESA and to be hosted and accommodated with ESA. I'll tell you why and how. I came together with an Albanian friend and colleague enrolled in the same PhD program, but while he had to search to find an apartment, and coming from Albania at the time wasn't easy. Mm-hmm. For me, it was enough to show up and a gentleman said, welcome. He made a photocopy of my photo and I felt home, Whereas my colleague, in addition to the financial cost, he had to spend a lot of time to find a room. And that not only meant great importance for me from a financial and logistic viewpoint, but it was important because I felt home. I was motivated. And that counts a lot because once you are in research work, you need to be motivated. And there was an excellent staff, Professor Praga, Professoressa Cimati. They're always available there and very supportive, and an excellent infrastructure, which all together made it possible for us to focus on our research work. Now, what was unique about ESA? It was interdisciplinary and multidisciplinary dimension. We had many activities such as the weekly workshops that Priyank mentioned, where we could get in touch with different disciplines, researchers presenting findings from different scientific disciplines. The intercultural dimension was very important. I met people from all over the world. I was sharing the apartment with a lawyer student, a PhD student studying law from Paraguay, the first person I met from Paraguay. And it was very useful to me because I spent hours and hours talking to my friend from Paraguay and getting concept about law. I mean, to be honest, at that point, I didn't know much about law, but as an economist, becoming familiar with laws and institutions is essential. So in that way, it proved very important to me to build up this multi and interdisciplinary approach. So what was the impact from my stay and affiliation with ESA? As I mentioned before, the great hospitality, the friendly environment, and the excellent facility enabled me to successfully complete the PhD timely. And the exposure to intercultural and interdisciplinary research made it was crucial for me to engage in international cooperation. And I'm engaged in many international projects. I'm working with many colleagues from different parts of the world and doing interdisciplinary research, contribute to more than 50 journal articles in index journals. And I continue the collaboration with colleagues also from Unibo. So being part of ESA was a privilege, and it was very important for me to be inspired and motivated during my PhD and after my PhD work. So I'm very grateful for the opportunity that was given to me. That's me.
Thank you, Dini. Thank you very much. Thank you. Masood, you last but not least.
So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Masood Yassi. I'm originally from Afghanistan. And I came to Italy in 2005 for my master. I did my master in law and economics, and then I entered the PhD program in law and economics. And as already mentioned, it was not an easy process for me to find a room because of the fact, first of all, I was a Muslim. So there was a biasness toward Muslim people and the society. And the second of all, because I came from a poor country, my financial ability was also very limited. I'm very glad that I had the opportunity to get the scholarship from Institute of Advanced Studies and the accommodation. There, I could focus very much on my project, my PhD project, where I finished it successfully with high marks, and then entered into the labor market and became very successful again. I worked for 7 years at the Free University of Amsterdam in the Netherlands, and then moved back to Italy at the Institute of Gran Sasso Science Institute. And I was a lecturer. I worked for 2 years. And just a few days ago, I left Italy again, and I found another position at the Southampton University. So I will be in the UK for, let's say, I don't know for how long, but I will be there. So this is all my successful history is somehow is related to the opportunity that I got. Especially from Institute of Advanced Studies, but also to the School of Law and Professor Gilberto Antonelli, that unfortunately he's not among us today. Professor Braga told me that he will invite him, but of course.
Yeah, he received the invitation, but then he has retired, you know.
Yeah, I know. But anyway, he is a great mentor, and he is a great supervisor. I really appreciate his effort. Yeah, this is my story, and yeah, I'm very glad. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Masood. So these were our testimonials. They were just in kind of random choice. The ones we could find on the internet, then by searching the keyword Institute of Advanced Studies together you know, and they use that in their CVs, which is exactly what we want. We want to have a network of alumni, international alumni, and as the rector was saying, that will you know, being our ambassadors. I use the lectors' words, ambassadors. So you are all invited to encourage people from your countries to apply to the University of Bologna, also via this new project, because with this type of competition, we bring here good people. You know, the mating of interdisciplinarity and internationalization, you know, we're trying to do that, which is a weird chemistry, bringing together people from different countries and to work on different topics. Is the quintessence of interdisciplinarity. You know, there is nothing more we can do than that. And doing things together, I'm sure you share this view with me, doing things together is the best way to build the links, you know, can last for a long time. And links also with your, you will all be Dr. Bolognenses, and you will remember your mom, University of Bologna, alma mater. Okay, having said that, I think I've just said too much. I know that I have asked Nino Rotolo, my friend and vice rector for research, to close the comments in the end, unless the rector wants to add some further comment. But I think that we were successful. The proof of concept was the work you showed us today. So it works, and it is worthwhile, and it's worth investing on this job. So I don't know, Francesco.
I just wish to thank all of you, really thank all of you. And I spoke a lot, and I would like to leave the floor to Professor Rotolo to draw some conclusion or to share some reflections on the event today. So thank you again to all of you.
Thank you, Francesco. Thank you, Dario. It was a great event. The initiative is wonderful. The International PhD College is a great idea, and there's a brilliant continuation of what we did so far. I know we have short time, so I just take a couple of minutes to say a couple of things, you know, trying to draw a conclusion from the meeting today. First of all, thank you very much. It was very inspiring, a lot of, you know, ideas and comments. Well, this morning I can tell you a couple of things. Well, the first is this morning I met all the ERC PI of the University of Bologna, right? I met 30 ERC, so grantee from European Research Council we have in Bologna. And they said exactly what you said during this meeting, right? They said, we would like to have more community building. We need to work together. We want to go beyond our vertical research and try to connect with the others. Why? So what you do is exactly this, right? What you did and what you do and what we will do in the PhD college is exactly this, right? To build a community. Why? Because research and science is a social enterprise. You know, some of you said, right? The most precious time where we found good ideas was not what? No, of course I'm joking, but not, you know, not so much. You know, most of the good ideas were not found in the lab. Were found where we discussed in the kitchen, where we met in the corridor of the department, when we had a pint of beer after a pizza. That was the time. And this, of course, is joking, but not so much, in a sense that research is a social enterprise. Okay, but the question is, which is the place of our social enterprise? Can be virtual. Well, in general, I would say that universities are places in international waters. In that sense, I like the idea of internationalization, but in a sense, I don't like it so much. I'm Kantian from as a background, and you know, for me, universities are open to the world. They don't have any nationality at all. Of course, reality is different, right? But this is something we have to take into account when we work in universities. So the question is, how can we do this? How can we take the opportunity from pandemic? Pandemic, of course, is a threat for many perspectives. For example, one of the risks is that the economic crisis that could lead to have in the future regional universities and less mobility than before. And this is a real threat, because the problem is not only the question of doing to the lecture rooms or not. The question is that to have financial resources to, to afford studies, to move to other countries. Okay, this is a challenge, but there's also an opportunity, as you said, right? We have to rethink everything, and we have to to find new ways for interaction. I would say that we are scientists, we are researchers, and we know what science is, what research is. We know that we need social interaction. We also know that with every difficult time, there is always, if we are clever enough, good outcomes, good results, good opportunities. It's up to us. It's up to us. So my conclusion is very positive. I ask you all to spread the name of the University of Bologna in the world. You are our testimonials. You are our ambassadors, I would say. So thanks very much to the colleagues who were part of the PhD college, and those who are now, and those who will come. So thanks very much. Good luck, everybody.
Thank you, Nino. Thank you, everybody. Thanks, everybody. So then, with time, in 100 years from now, I don't know, well, 100 is too long. Let's say in 20 years from now, you will be able to say, I was there when the International PhD College of the University of Bologna was launched. I was there. And maybe you will retrieve this movie, the film, the recording for tonight, and you see what you looked like 20 years younger. Okay, I've said enough. I think we can just close down here, unless the rector wants to have the final word. But then, okay, I guess we should close now. I thank everybody for participating, everybody for the work you've done, and well, see you soon. Hopefully in person. Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Arrivederci.
Thank you.
Ciao.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Buonasera.